All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everyone.
And today we got a question. Should Mayor Pete Buttigieg fear Andrew Yang? I believe the answer is yes, and there's data to prove it. However, others may disagree depending on the exact same data set. Therefore, we're going to analyze this for you today. Cody, tell us what's going on.
Okay, the first thing I wanted to do, I was hoping, I was going to see if I'm going to show it. Sorry, I apologize to anyone. There's a curse word here, but this is the best way probably to sum up the difference between Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang today.
That doesn't seem like a smart thing to say here.
Because it's the most evocative.
Favorite curse word?
That doesn't seem like a smart.
Highlight Pete. And I really quickly will dive into this thing and we'll compare and contrast. But first of all, Card, have you seen the video before? It's been very viral. It's gone everywhere.
Yes, I have. I think I saw a larger version where there was more candidates, right?
Oh, this was a clip from it, just highlighting these two
okay.
candidates.
Exactly.
And because I mean, you might ask yourself, who cares if Andrew Yang and Pete Buttigieg have different answers? I think it is like the standard politician. Well, you know, I don't want to say a curse word, and then Andrew Yang just drops one right there on him. However, the reason why I bring that up, and we bring this up,
that's your strongest argument.
No.
With all of the data that we have.
No, but
with all of the preparation that
saying,
we've done.
The most concise way to highlight the differences, because I want to show you guys something. There's a website. I'm actually not that familiar with it. It is the TYLT. Okay. However, they did a poll, I believe, across multiple social media platforms on which underdog candidate are you most excited for, Andrew Yang or Pete Buttigieg. Okay. Now, what the most fascinating part of this whole thing to me is, and I show that the humorous video just to kind of give you that first contrast of what these two candidates are like. This is what fascinated me. They have the real-time graph here. It shows you in real time how the voting went. And we'll get into the more serious stuff in a second here, but just overview. I think this is what we're going to see with these two candidates. I think there's going to be this point where Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang, they meet, and then when they meet, I think the Pete Buttigieg support is going to flatline, and the Andrew Yang support isn't going to flatline. It's going to keep going up. And one of the most...
And I have my theories as to why, but keep going.
Of course. Well, of course. We'll get those in a minute.
Hey, they're good. They're great theories, and it has to do with substance. Thank you, Cody.
Get to in a minute. This came out just about a couple weeks ago. In the betting odds for president, and a lot of people, you know, it's the proverbial putting your money where your mouth is. Betting odds do show what the actual... Andrew Yang recently actually passed Pete Buttigieg in... and you look, and basically he's kind of in a virtual tie, I would say, with Buttigieg. I mean, they're within really close. And then you get to the Kamala, Bernie, and then Biden Warren tier, which is funny. I don't necessarily disagree that Elizabeth Warren has the best chance of winning as things stand today. However, the one last thing I want to highlight before we go back to you, just going through our stuff with Pete Buttigieg, was this article by BuzzFeed News. It actually kind of prompted this video today. It says, Pete Buttigieg has cooled off, but his campaign says it's time for phase 3. And I want to go down and I want to highlight one little thing here for you guys. Here we go. Here's a paragraph. And it says that Buttigieg hasn't gained ground as those ahead of them have lost it. And recent polling from Morning Consult found he was not the second choice for Biden, Sanders, Warren, or Harris voters. Some of his backers also believe the presence of other relatively buzzy candidates, such as entrepreneur Andrew Yang, have cut into his support.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what do we see just a few days after this? We see this interview on Now This from Pete Buttigieg. And check this out for a minute and tell me if any of this sounds familiar.
Worried about how we're going to compete with China. I'm more worried about how we're going to compete with robots. If you look from 2000 to 2010, for every job that was lost to trade, there were 6 jobs lost because of automation.
Is there
the
an
thing we need
echo
to
in this
realize about
channel?
automation is it's all types of
They're just reading quotes
Some
from
have
Andrew Yang
gotten a lot
speeches
of
right now, and they
attention.
just
Anyone who
they
spends
messed up.
time around the automotive industry, manufacturing, which is big where I live, knows that robots and machinery are making a difference.
Okay, now, of course, I'm not going to say Andrew Yang's the only candidate allowed to talk about automation, but I just want to highlight, at a time where it looks like Buttigieg is kind of hitting that maybe 5-6% realistically is what his share of this current Democratic base is. We'll get to a minute why we think this is. But like I said, I think what we saw in this graph is basically what we're going to see with these two candidates. I think Pete Buttigieg will hold a lead above Andrew Yang. Early on, he's got more support, more billionaires, but I think we'll reach the point where you kind of hit the limit on what the Pete support is, and I think Yang is going to keep growing. That's the last thing I want to say.
Well, yeah, but you have to ask yourself why here, okay? And I'm going to try and not be cynical in this, Cody, okay? But you have to really ask yourself, Put yourself in the shoes of the supporter of Pete Buttigieg versus the supporter of Andrew Yang. And you wonder why the graph of excitement for Andrew Yang keeps growing while the graph of excitement for Mayor Pete Buttigieg just kind of flatlines. And it's because of the identity politics. All right?
Not at all.
No, you can't say not at all. There is far less substance on Mayor Pete than there is identity. He's a smart guy. He knows 7 languages. I actually think he reminds me of so many friends I had in college. I would want to be friends with Mayor Pete Buttigieg right now. I'll tell you right now, I am a huge fan of his personality, huge fan of his intelligence, very grateful for his service, okay? However, he's not as bad as Beto O'Rourke having 0 policy proposals, but he was very, very light on policy proposals. And a lot of people love the fact that he was a vocal LGBT critic of Donald Trump, who became kind of a mini rock star in his breakout moment.
The media doesn't love it.
No, what do you mean the media didn't love his porn star comment, calling Donald Trump the porn star presidency?
Maybe that's the wrong way of putting it, but I can show you right here. The media would rather talk about Beto O'Rourke than they would about Pete Buttigieg.
Oh yeah, because Beto O'Rourke's a blue blood insider. You know, they project onto him everything that they think they are.
If it's all about identity politics and policy has nothing to do with it, what about Joe Biden?
No, I'm not saying...
Why is he leading?
Okay, no, I'm not... Well, because he's the giant silverback gorilla in the room that was the vice president and has been in politics for 40 or 50 years.
So that matters more than identity, correct?
Yes, okay, so I'm not saying it's only identity. I am saying that substance is what generates the longest lasting form of energy in a campaign. Look at Bernie Sanders, okay? He had a lot of actual policy proposals that people could digest in 2016. Whether you agreed with them or not, he was putting out policy proposals, okay? And a lot of people are... Why do you think Mayor Pete got $27 million more than any other candidate? Okay, there's a lot of people that are excited to have an LGBTQ candidate. And when that honeymoon period goes away, then all of a sudden you have to look at substance, and there was less substance there. While Andrew Yang has got like 150 policy proposals on his website, how many did Mayor Pete have?
Like 30 or 40?
Yeah, he had 30 or 40. He had a great personality.
He's still in the race.
Yeah, has 30 or 40. He's got a phenomenal personality, okay, but he had some huge hiccups, especially when the African American community confronted him about that the boy that was shot in his community, and then also when you had there was the oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what the second gaffe was.
He's also remarkably young. He's 37 years old. I mean, if he won, he'd have to be by far one of the youngest presidents
it's hilarious.
Ever had. He is extraordinarily young to be in the position he's in.
Yeah, he's actually barely eligible to run for president.
Yeah,
he's like only like 3 or 4 years older than AOC or
one
something.
One thing I think is so interesting about this, though, about his age and with this is I think this is the problem the Democratic Party is hit in not having that candidate there, because a guy who's this old, to be frank, I think for 37 years old, being a mayor of was it South Bend, I believe, Indiana, yeah, and that's your only background aside from being in the military. This guy shouldn't be running for president, not because the reason why I say that is he should be groomed to win an election 8 to 12 years from now.
Yes.
And I think if the Democratic Party was more stable, they'd be doing that. And they say, Pete, we love you. You're a really smart guy. You're pretty temperamental. You're not someone we think is like a hothead or someone we're going to go out there and make statements we can't back up. But dude, you're 37. Try it at 50. We'll give you the support for the next 12 years.
Now, see, I actually disagree with that. I think Democrats run a much better PR and ground game because they're willing to run the young, unexperienced guy. One of the biggest problems with Republicans is their seniority-based leadership model, where they do exactly what you say. Well, they would never have done that to Barack Obama. They never would have run Barack
who's
Obama.
Leading the Democratic Party today.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying you said that he should be groomed and he should be prepped and he should be weighted, which is conventional wisdom. But if there is a party that is more willing to break with conventional wisdom in order to win, it is the Democrats.
Okay, but what does Sanders, Warren, and Biden, who get the support of Democratic voters, have in common?
A willingness to adopt socialism. At least 2 of the 3. Well, once again, Biden.
No, the Democratic voters, when they ask Democratic voters, who do you want? Right now, we can
right now, Biden's ahead because of name recognition.
But I'm saying we can argue
he's
with
just ahead because of name recognition.
I love how everyone's just ahead because of this one thing you know about. Oh, he's just here because of this. Dude, look, the 3 leading candidates are not young people. The
Yes.
Democratic voters aren't telling you we want young candidates. They really are saying we want candidates to whatever ideas we want. We want candidates to exemplify it. So
Well, we're young,
imagine
but a
if
lot of
Pete
young
Buttigieg-
haven't tuned in yet.
But dude, just look at this is the polling data. 30% want Joe Biden. He isn't young. 17 want Elizabeth Warren. She ain't young. And 16 want Bernie Sanders. He ain't young either. Okay. And Kamala Harris, she's the youngest of the four, and she's not even exactly in her 30s. Okay,
But
so
that's projecting a knowledge about all the candidates onto the people that are answering the polls. Most people, when they when they're asked, "Have you ever received one of these political polls?" They say, "Who are you supporting in the 2020 election?" Half the people don't even know who's going, except for, "Oh, I've seen Joe Biden on TV and I recognize his name, so I'm a Biden person."
okay, but my point being exactly, none of them were saying, "Oh, I don't like him because he's too old." Okay. Then I think if there was just a more stable party and we didn't have 20 people running, you would see candidates like Pete Buttigieg, who are smart guys who do really well in front of the camera. He's a veteran. I mean, he really does. And I don't want to say in like the identity boxes, but as far as like a lot of people, myself included, like to see someone running for president who's at least been in the military, so they know what they're doing.
Yes,
'cause that's
absolutely.
Their commander in chief. Something we like about Tulsi Gabbard as well. But to get back to the comparisons to Andrew Yang and him, you'll look and you'll see how he's leading Andrew Yang back to the polling aggregate by about 2 points right now. And then Yang actually recently surpassed Booker. I would say, honestly, we're probably looking closer to Buttigieg is at about 4, Yang's at about 3. Just they're fluctuating back and forth between those two numbers. He's getting really close, and he's not only cutting into him on the political stuff. He's not only cutting into him on betting lines, okay? He's not only cutting into him on just informal polls on different social media platforms. Andrew Yang is really taking over a lot of, as they mentioned in this article, that the people who like Pete Buttigieg because he's young and he's kind of exciting and he brings a new angle to politics we haven't seen. He's a tremendously smart guy, like I said. And we're talking this before. Every person I've talked to who actually supports Pete Buttigieg, I always ask him, like, why do you support him? Like, I don't know that much about his policies. And they all say, oh, dude, he's so smart. Like, he's like a really smart guy.
Well, see,
I
but
can't
that's
argue with that.
temperament.
But I can't say, oh, I don't care that he's smart. That matters.
Okay, but hold on.
One last thing. I'm just going to say, I think the scariest thing for him and why we are seeing people say that Andrew Yang supporters are cutting in is because when you look at all the candidates lined up, I would say the candidate where the Pete Buttigieg is very smart defense works the least against is Andrew Yang not very smart? I mean, how many $1 million companies has Buttigieg sold? Do you know what I mean? So like the notion that Andrew Yang is also perceived as kind of younger, very hyper intelligent guy bringing a lot of different angles to it. I think that's Pete's strong suit. And we see Andrew Yang, who's a little bit more seasoned. He isn't 37. You know, he's actually done a little bit more than Pete Buttigieg has, not militarily, but in other parts of life. And I think that cuts into Pete's supporter base because if you want a candidate who's really smart, I don't see how you could say Andrew Yang isn't smart enough. He's a very smart guy as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. And well, but also more than exactly, I'm defending my thesis here. You have to understand, I deal with... See, right now we're dealing with early adopters, okay? People that can even name all 20 of the candidates on the Democratic side right now are either political insiders or also political junkies, SJWs, or just early adopters of political races. The average public has not really tuned in yet, except for into a couple of debates.
I got news for you, man. SJWs, quote unquote, they're normal people. They don't follow this stuff either. You ask them who's running and they'd say, I don't know, Biden.
Okay, no, I'm fine with the idea that there's an SJW class that are just normal people. And I'm explaining the psychology here, okay? There is a mentality that plagues modern politics right now of intersectionality, right? So let's take Pete Buttigieg and Andrew Yang. Guess what? Both of them check that box. You got a minority. Oh, and then you got you've got a ethnic minority. Then you got a sexual orientation minority. Okay, boom. Then second, we're still not dealing with substance. All right, is temperament. Wow, great. Both have actually really good temperament. And if you hate Donald Trump's temperament, then you're gonna like Pete Buttigieg. Like I said, I want to be Pete Buttigieg's friend. I like the guy. I think he's got a phenomenal temperament, the kind of temperament you want in a presidency, okay? But also so does Andrew Yang. So right now the scoreboard is checkbox 1, checkbox 2, we're tied, okay? But now when it gets to the nitty gritty of, okay, now that I've figured out I'm comfortable with this guy from an intersectional standpoint, and I figure out that I'm comfortable with this guy from a temperamental standpoint, okay, both actually share this like looking 10 years younger than they really are thing going on. You know what I'm saying? So they're even tied on the third checkbox, okay? But now it gets to substance. Okay? And it's just like dating. People all the time say, men just want just looks. And then guys say, girls want just money. No, actually, they want the same thing. They want both security and comfort with the person, but they just want them in different order, okay? So voting is just like dating. Once you've checked those boxes first, okay, then all of a sudden you have to pay attention to substance. And that's where Andrew Yang is going to decimate Pete Buttigieg, because no matter what he says on Now This Plus, because they're trying to pub him, okay, because there's some people that are just hell bent on the idea of first black president, first female president, first gay president. You know, it's the identity politics bunch. So they're going to be obviously publicizing him, and he's going to get a lot of attention for that, which is great. If that's your angle, play that angle. However, at the end of the day, at some point, substance is going to have to kick in, and you can make your Now This Plus video saying some people are worried about trade with China, but I'm worried about the robots. And at best, you will look like a Johnny come lately.
All right, dude, I've spoken.
And substance will trump.
Okay.
Substance will trump non-substance.
But I've spoken to probably a dozen or more people who support Pete Buttigieg. You know how many of them brought up the fact that they like that he's gay? Just guess how many.
Probably a minority, but
Not one.
think
Not one even brought it up.
not one.
Not one. They all said military service and intelligence is what they were most appealed to him. They said, "I love how he was. I think he was in Navy intelligence. Something like he was not.
Yeah.
He was not some.
By the way, have you seen pictures of him in his military uniform?
I have to admit, when I first heard, I'm like, really, he's military? I saw pictures of him in his fatigues. I'm like, I can see it. Okay, he looks like a military guy.
He looks really young, and he looks kind of BA.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like I said, when I talk to
Yeah.
people who like Pete Buttigieg, they say, I like that he's in the military, and I like that he's really smart. So I think with Andrew Yang, like I said, to be frank, if Andrew Yang had served in the military point, I'd be all on him, because when you're president, realistically, we can talk policy. When you're president, there's a couple things you actually have control over. There's a Senate, there's a House, there's a Supreme Court. You don't get to just make decisions. And the military is one of those things you actually do have a lot of control over directly as president, especially in the years following the 9/11 attacks. I believe we made it easier for us to respond quicker to nations because we weren't actually going to war with a country. You know what I mean? It was like, we need to get to this part of the world to stop a certain threat. Anyway, I think that is a cool background. So I think that's one edge Pete Buttigieg does have. But like I said, I think this graph right here is going to be pretty prophetic in the sense that there's going to be a point. I think the better
that
angle
graph
is,
illustrates everything I said. There's a point where they're very, very similar, but when this analysis of substance kicks in, Andrew Yang pulls away.
no, it's that's what this tells me is that the Pete Buttigieg support base, while it is there and it is not to be laughed at, is kind of flatlining while Andrew Yang is growing. I think that's what we're seeing.
Well, and what's making Andrew Yang grow over Pete Buttigieg if they're so freaking similar?
Exposure. And I think the thing is that...
But what's the exposure based off? People saying, I love the UBI hashtag universal basic income.
I honestly...
Substance.
Hold on. I would say how close are... No, substance is close, but how close are Yang and Buttigieg in the polls? They said that they draw a similar crowd. And
very
you'll
similar
notice
crowd.
they write a lot more articles and they talk about him a lot more on cable news. And he's tweeted about the same as Andrew Yang. Like, I would say this
but why
is
is
the
the media-
discrepancy. This is a 2-point discrepancy in the polls right here. I would say, I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that. Being written about and talked about that much more often.
But why do you think they're writing and talking about him so much more?
Because
Because he's the intersectional LGBTQ candidate.
It's not intersectionality.
They're going to be highlighting that. Yes. Do you know how many articles I've seen of like, oh, America's first openly gay presidential candidate?
That's what they write for the peasants. But what people actually talk about and the people that are in making decision making, they think this guy is smart enough and they think his military background is going to groom him for president.
Well,
I
yes,
agree.
I'm not arguing that he's not smart
But my
enough.
point is, I say give it 12, 15 years and yes, he'd be a great candidate. At 37 with no real big political wins yet, it's Andrew Yang's going uphill against this. But Andrew Yang, thankfully, has not been in politics at all. So in a way, it's almost better being not involved in politics at all.
Yeah, I was about
than
to...
jumping from mayor to president.
Now, that's something I wholesale agree with. I think that there's almost like this. It's like playing, not Crazy Eights, Hearts, where, once hearts have been broken, you have to, there's just that point, right? You kind of either need to do the Trump and the Yang and the Steyer and the Howard Schultz thing and just be a political outsider, be like a Bob Dole, you know what I'm saying? Or you need to have enough experience under your belt if you're taking this pathway where people think, okay, cool, he was a governor. I'll trust him with the American economy because he ran the Rhode
Indiana.
Island.
Yeah.
I know he's from Indiana, but let's just say you were governor.
No offense to Rhode Island. I would say that's one
You're
of the
right.
few
That
specific
was actually a
states
really bad example.
where I would say, you know what, maybe a bigger one, and we'll talk about this.
In fact, Mayor Pete probably has to run the same budget as Rhode Island, right?
And South Bend. Yeah, South Bend is a college town. They generate a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
But sorry, just one thing I wanted to, you made a good point there. I wanted to bring up when we are talking about candidates like this and the thing. I think a good analogy too is like the notion of like if you work at a company and they bring in a new CEO, it's like he hasn't worked in this industry, but he's a smart guy. We think he could be a good C-level. That is less insulting than the guy in the mailroom just getting promoted to the C-level. You know what I mean? It's like I'd rather a guy who's never worked in this industry who like could do it get the position than like the guy who sits next to me in the sales floor is now he's the CFO. Like what him? I just worked out. This guy's CFO now. So I think along those lines, but. Like I said,
we don't hire from within.
Exactly. But I do think we are seeing, like I said, I can show you gambling lines that are moving. I can show you online polls that are moving. If I can find them, here we go. And I could show you a lot of stuff that Pete base is looking to. And I think, like I said, I think this is the best way of explaining it. We're going to reach the point where in this real clear average right here, we're probably going to see about the same thing, where Pete and Yang become not virtually tied, but literally tied.
Okay.
I'm talking maybe both of them hit about 4.5, and I do think we're going to see that same trajectory, where Pete hangs at about 4 to 5 and Yang goes to 10-15. That's my way too early to call it, but still early call is because, like I said, people I know who support Pete Buttigieg, they all say the same thing. He's a very smart guy. He's a well-spoken guy. I like that he was in the military, and he's like very smart. Can't take that away from him. I just think, like you said, I think subconsciously in politics, going from mayor to president is just a little bit too much compared from nobody to president. It's that weird psychological thing. But my last comment, I do think this speaks to just how shaky the Democratic Party has got, where they have a guy like Buttigieg who should be groomed for office 15 years from now when he's 50 and just primed to win the presidency. Not now when he's 37 and is only the mayor. And like you said, he's not running. I think the reason why he's not running on a whole lot more than I'm smart is because he hasn't had a whole lot of time. Andrew Yang went on a tour across the United States after starting and selling multiple companies, starting and selling a company. He founded the nonprofit, toured the country, and wrote a book on it. Yeah, he hasn't in political office, but he's done something, right? And I think that's just Buttigieg in the military. That's something too. But I think he just needs a little bit more domestic wins to run. To sum up our question, I do think Mayor Pete should definitely fear Andrew Yang in this election. I think his base is probably one of the quickest to erode when it actually gets to that point.
Yeah, and I believe it's because of substance. And one of those substantive things that you actually mentioned, I love your word wins. He needs more wins. See, Andrew Yang, even though he is an outsider, he's got some big wins. Venture for America. I'd heard of that before I'd heard of Andrew Yang. You know what I'm saying?
People. He literally helped people.
Yeah. CEO titles. In the private sector, he's got wins that are bigger than most people's advances and wins in the public sector. And there kind of is this mental hierarchy, shall we say, that people give certain titles and certain sizes of private organizations versus public organizations. So anyway, let us know what you guys think, okay? A lot of this lacks measurable quantifiers other than just polling data.
Yeah.
We can speculate the why, but the why doesn't show up in the numbers. Only the what shows up in the numbers, okay? So if you have a different why than us, please let us know what your thoughts are. Comment below. If you haven't liked yet, please like. If you want to check out our latest 2 videos, we've got links right here. And also, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please let us know what you guys think of the comments, and then smash the subscribe button right here. This is Problem Solver Politics. We will see you in the next video.